on page 33. And I've been doing this for 1 hour non-stop. Oh my God, I'm tired. Let's go on. 9 days. As she fell, Annabeth thought about Hesiod, the old Greek poet who speculated... Oh, wait, by the way. In the last book I read, which I didn't say because it's kind of gone ripped up and broken and smashed into pieces. Don't tell anyone that. Especially don't tell my mum. So they rescued Athena Parthenos, but Annabeth fell into a big hole which led to Tartarus, where a giant spider person was getting killed. But Percy held on to Annabeth, but they both fell instead. So this is what's happening. 9 days. As she fell, they've been falling for 9 days. Is quite a long time, right? As she fell for 9 days, Annabeth thought about Hesiod, the old Greek poet who speculated it would take 9 days to fall from Earth to Tartarus. She hoped Hesiod was wrong. She'd lost track of how long she and Percy had been falling. Hours, a day. It felt like an eternity. They had been holding hands ever since they dropped into the chasm. Now Percy pulled her close, hugging her tight, as they tumbled through the absolute darkness. Wind whistled in Annabeth's ears. The air grew hotter and damper, as if they were plummeting into the throat of a massive dragon. Her recently broken ankle throbbed through. She couldn't tell if it was still wrapped in spiderwebs. The reason they fell was because a giant spider lady webbed her Annabeth's foot, and then they started falling. That's how they fell. And also Percy had to blah blah blah. I won't say how you do it. By the way, the monster. Ouch! The monster was cursed, and his name was. I think you guys might have heard it because I've heard it before. I didn't know what it was, but now I do. The cursed monster, Arachne. 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 I'm just going to call it Arachne. Despite having been trapped in her own webbing, smashed by a car and plunged into Tartarus, the spider lady had got her revenge. So don't worry, it was not Annabeth who got smashed by a car, trapped in her own web. She doesn't web things, does she? So she can't get trapped in her own web. So you knew it. So I know it's a spider that said this. Carry on. We're only on page 33 for not time. Okay, the spider lady had got her revenge. Somehow, we're finally on the next page 34. The silk had entangled Annabeth's leg and dragged her over the side of the pit, with Percy in tow. Annabeth couldn't imagine that Arachne was still alive, somewhere below them in the darkness. She didn't want to meet that monster again when they reached the bottom, on the bright side, assuming there was a bottom. Annabeth and Percy would probably be flattened on impact, so giant spiders were their least of their worries. She wrapped her arms around Percy and tried not to sob. She expected her life to be easy. Most demigods died young at the hands of terrible monsters. That way, it had been since. That's the way. Most demigods died young at the hands of terrible monsters. That was the way it had been since ancient times. The Greek invented tragedy. They knew that the greatest heroes didn't have happy endings. Still, this wasn't fair. She'd gone through so much to achieve that statue of her mother who is Athena. Oh, I said that with two syllables. Cool. With Athena. What is it? The statue of Athena. She just when she'd succeeded, when the things had been looking up and she'd reunited with Percy, they had just been plunged to their deaths. Even the gods couldn't just devise such a fate so twisted. But Gaia wasn't like other gods. Gaia is the Earth Mother, the Gaia is the Earth, apparently. Gaia, but she just, like, people call her the Earth Mother, but she's not the mother of the Earth. She is the Earth. The Earth Mother was older, more vicious, more bloodthirsty. Annabeth could imagine her as they fell into the depths. Annabeth pressed her lips to Percy's ear. I love you. I meant, I love you. She wasn't sure he could hear her. Annabeth pressed her lips to Percy's ear. I love you. She wasn't sure he could hear her, but if they were going to die, she wanted those to be her last words. She tried desperately to think of a plan to save them. She was the daughter of a Thaner. She'd proven herself in the tunnels under Rome, beaten a whole series of challenges with only her wits. But she couldn't think of any way to reverse or even slow their fall. But she couldn't think of any way to reverse or even slow their fall. Neither of them had the power to fly, not like Jason, who can control the wind, or Frank, who can turn into a winged animal. If they reached the bottom at terminal velocity, well, she knew enough science to know it would be terminal. She was seriously wondering whether they could fashion a parachute of their shirts. That's how desperate she was when something around their surroundings changed. The darkness took on a grey-red tinge. She realized she could see Percy's hair as she hugged him. The whistling in her ears turned into more of a roar. The air became intolerably hot, permeated with a smell like water. Sorry, it's my grandma. I don't have a grandma, sorry. That was just me. I can't change these voices. And become like a singer like this. I'm an old lady. No, I'm not. I am vanilla. No, sorry, that's not my name. Oh my god, I said my name. Sorry about that. Please just say my name, which is... Yeah, I'm not going to say it again. Where was I? Permeated with a smell like rotten eggs. Ugh. Suddenly, the chute they'd been falling through opened into a vast cavern. Maybe half a mile below them, Annabeth could see the bottom. For a moment, she was too stunned to think properly. Sorry if I'm redoing something, but suddenly the chute they'd been falling through opened into a vast cavern. Maybe half a mile below them. Annabeth could see the bottom. For a moment, she was too stunned to think properly. The entire island of Manhattan could have fitted inside this cavern, and she could have even see its full extent. Red clouds hung in the air like vaporized blood. The landscape, at least what she could see of it, was rocky black, plains punctuated by jagged mountains and fiery chasms. To Annabeth's left, the ground dropped away in a series of cliffs, like like colossal steps leading deeper into the abyss. The stench of sulphur made it hard to concentrate, but she focused on the ground directly below them and saw a ribbon of glittering black liquid. A river. Percy! She yelled in her ear. Water! She gestured frankly. Percy's face was hard to read in the dim red light, but he looked shell-shocked and terrified, but he nodded as if he understood. By the way, don't forget to subscribe. Please do, because I've never had any subscribers in my life, which I've always wanted to have subscribers. Never mind. I don't think you will subscribe. But please do if you can. Or please, okay? Oh my god, I'm so tired. It's 10 o'clock. It's 11 o'clock in the night. Percy could control... Wait, where was I? Was he alright? He nodded as if he understood. Percy could control water, assuming that the water was below them. He may be able to cushion their fall somehow. Of course, Annabeth heard horrible stories about the rivers of the underworld. They could take away your memories or burn your body and souls to ashes, but she decided not to think about that. This was their only chance. The river hurtled toward them. In the last second, Percy yelled definitely. The water erupted in a massive geyser and swallowed them whole. So please subscribe though, by the way. Please subscribe. The impact in... Chapter 6, Annabeth. Please subscribe. Please subscribe. The impact didn't kill her. I haven't had any subscribers, by the way. But I have to say they didn't. The impact didn't kill her, but the cold nearly did. Freezing water shocked the air right out of her lungs. Her limbs turned rigid and she lost her grip on Percy. She began to sink. Strange wailing sounds filled her ears. Millions of heartbroken voices as if the river were made of distilled sadness. The voices were worse than the cold. They weighed her down and made her numb. What's the point of struggling, they told her. You're dead. Anyway, you'll never leave this place. She could sink to the bottom and drown. Let the river carry her body away. That would be easier. She could just close her eyes. Percy gripped her hand and jolted her back to reality. She couldn't see him in the murky water, but suddenly she didn't want to die. Together they kicked upward and broke the surface. Annabeth gasped, grateful for the air, no matter how. No matter how sulphurous. The water swirled around them, and she realized Percy was creating a whirlpool to buoy them up. Though she couldn't make out their surroundings, she knew this was a river. Rivers had shores. Land, she croaked. Go sideways. Percy looked near dead with exhaustion. Usually water reinvigorated him, but not this water. Controlling it must have taken every bit of his strength. The whirlpool began to dissipate. Annabeth hooked one arm around his waist and struggled across the current. The river worked against her. Thousands of weeping voices whispered in her ear, getting inside her brain. Life is despair, they said. Everything is pointless. And then you die. Pointless, Percy murmured. Pointless. Hope you can hear me with this, but pointless. Brand-hill. Who's Brand-hill? I just made it up. It's a word in Asia. That means sunshine. Oh no, it turned off. Oh, it didn't. Sorry, it just went black out. Yeah. So everything is pointless, and you die. Pointless. Pointless, Percy. Actually, I don't. Pointless. Actually, can you hear me? Pointless, Percy murmured. His teeth chattered from the cold. He stopped swimming and began to sink. Percy, she shrieked. The river is messing with your mind. It's the Cocytus, the river of elimination. It's made of pure misery. Misery, he agreed. Fight it. She kicked and struggled, trying to keep both of them afloat. Another cosmic joke for Gaia to laugh at. Annabeth died trying to keep her boyfriend, the son of Poseidon, from drowning. Not going to happen, you hag, Annabeth thought. She hugged Percy tighter and kissed him. Tell me about New Rome, she demanded. What were your plans for us? New Rome? For us? Yes, you brain. You said we could have a future there. Tell me. Annabeth had never wanted to leave Camp Half-Blood. It was the only real home she'd ever known. But days ago on the Argo 2, Percy had told her that he imaged a future for the two of them amongst the Roman demigods in their city of New Rome. The veterans of the Legion could settle down safely, go to college, get married, even have kids. Architecture, Percy murmured. Like this. Percy murmured like this. Architecture. 57, 58, 59, 60. Right, so I've been reading for 1 hour 23 minutes. Cool and smooth, dude. The fog started to clear from his eyes. Thought you'd like the houses, the parks. There's one street with all these cool fountains. Annabeth started making progress against the current. Her limbs felt like a bag of wet sand, but Percy was helping her now. She could see the dark line of the shore about a stone throw away. College, she gasped. Can we go there together? Yeah, he agreed, a little more confidently. What would you study, Percy? Dunno, he admitted. Marine science, she suggested. Or oceanography? Surfing, he asked. She laughed at the sounds, and the sound sent a shockwave through the water. The wailing faded to background noise. Annabeth wondered if anyone had laughed in Tartarus before. Just a pure, simple laugh of pleasure. He doubted it. She used the last of her strength to reach the riverbank. Her feet dug into the sandy bottom. She and Percy hauled themselves ashore, shivering and gasping, and collapsed on the dark sand. Annabeth wanted to curl up next to Percy and go to sleep. She wanted to shut her eyes, hope all of this was just a bad dream, and wake up to find herself back on the yard to go to, safe with her friends. Well, as safe as a demigod could ever be. But no, they were really in Tartarus at their feet. The river Cosius roared past, a flood of liquid wretchedness. The sulphurous air stung Annabeth's lungs and prickled her sick skin. When she looked at her arms, she saw that they were already covered with angry rash. She tried to sit up and gasped in pain. The beach was the sand. They were sitting on a field of jagged black glass chips, some of which were now embedded in Annabeth's palms. So the air was acid, the water was misery, the ground was broken glass. Everything here was designed to hurt and kill Annabeth. It was designed to hurt and kill Annabeth. Annabeth managed a weak smile. Everything was designed to hurt and kill. Annabeth took a rattling breath and wondered if the voices in Cositus was right. Maybe fighting for survival would be pointless. They'd be dead within an hour. Next to her, Percy coughed. This place smells like my stepfather. That's what Percy was like, I think. Annabeth managed a weak smile. She'd never met Smelly Gale, but she'd heard enough stories. She loved Percy for trying to lift her spirits. If she'd fallen into Tartarus by herself, Annabeth thought she'd been doomed. After all, she'd been through beneath Rome, finding the Athena Parthenos. This was simply too much. She would have curled up and cried until she became another ghost, melting into Cositus. But she wasn't alone. She had Percy, and that meant she couldn't give up. She forced herself to take stock. Her foot was still wrapped in its makeshift cast of boards and bubble wrap, still tangled in a cobwebs. But when she moved it, it didn't hurt. The ambrosia she'd eaten in the tunnels under Rome must have finally mended her bones. Not her backbones, just her bones. Her backpack was gone, lost during the fall, or maybe washed away in the river. She hated losing Daedalus' laptop with all its fantastic programs and data. But she had worse problems. Her celestial bronze dagger was missing, the weapon she'd carried since she was 7 years old. The realization almost broke her, but she couldn't let herself dwell on it. Time to grieve later. What else did they have? No food, no water, basically no supplies at all. Yep, off to a promising start. Annabeth glanced at Percy. He looked pretty bad. His dark hair was plastered across his forehead. His T-shirt ripped to shreds. His fingers were scraped raw from holding onto that ledge before they fell. Most worrisome of all, he was shivering and his lips were blue. We should keep moving, or we'll get hypothermia, Annabeth said. Can you stand? He nodded. They both struggled to their feet. Annabeth put her arm around his waist. Though she wasn't sure who was supporting whom, she scanned their surroundings. Above, she saw no sign of the tunnel they'd fallen down. She couldn't even see the cavern, just blood-coloured clouds floating in the hazel grey air. It was like staring through a thin mix of tomato soup and cement. The black glass beach stretched inland about 50 yards, then dropped off the edge of a cliff. From where she stood, Annabeth couldn't see what was below, but the edge flickered with red light, as if illuminated by huge fires. A distant memory tugged at her, something about Tartarus and fire, but she could think too much about it. Percy inhaled sharply. Look, he pointed downstream. 100 feet away, a familiar-looking baby blue Italian car had crashed headfirst into the sand. It looked just like that Fiat that had smashed into Arachnon and sent her plummeting into the pit. Annabeth hoped she was wrong. How many Italian sports cars could there be in Italian? Part of her didn't want to go anywhere near it, but she had to find out. She gripped Percy's hand and they stumbled towards the wreckage. One of the car's tires had come off, and one was floating in a backwater eddy of coal theatres. The Fiat's windows had shattered, sending brighter glass like frosting across the dark beach. Under the crushing hood lay the tattered, glistening remains of a giant silk cocoon, the trap that Annabeth had tricked Arachne into weaving. It was unmistakably empty. Slash marks in the sand made a trail downriver, as if something heavy with multiple legs had scuttled into the darkness. She's alive! Annabeth was so horrified, so outraged by this unfairness of it all. She had to suppress the urge to throw up. I'm going to pause it there for a second and I'll come back, okay? Hello, I am back. I got the book, Heroes of Olympus, House of Hades. Am I right? I am right. This is the page we were on. Right. Here we are. Remember oh, don't worry about it. It's the Tartarus, Percy said. Monster home court. Down here, maybe they can't be killed. He gave Annabeth an embarrassed look, as if realizing he wasn't helping Team Morven, or maybe she's badly wounded and she crawled away to die. Let's go with that, Annabeth agreed. Percy was still shivering. Annabeth wasn't feeling any warmer either, despite the hot, sticky air. Sticky air? Doesn't feel like good air. Hot? Okay, I'm already burning hot for years. Just for an hour. About 5 hours. This place is key. Her the glass cuts on her hand was still bleeding, which was unusual for her. Normally, she healed fast. She healed fast. Her breathing got more, which was the glass cuts on her hand was still bleeding, which was unusual for her. Normally, she healed fast. Her breathing got more and more laboured. This place is killing us, she said. I mean, it's literally going to kill us unless Tartarus. Fire. That instant memory came into focus. She gazed inland towards the cliff, illuminated by the flames below. It was an absolutely crazy idea, but it might be their only chance. Unless what? Percy commented. We've got a brilliant plan, haven't you? It's a plan. Percy murmured. Annabeth murmured. Sorry, not Percy. Annabeth murmured. I don't know about brilliant. We need to find the river of fire. Sorry, I had to go to the toilet. I had to pause and restart. Sorry about that. Right. By the way, it's still the same day and I've been reading non-stop for 1 hour 33 minutes. Not very happy about that. But still. Chapter 7. Still Annabeth. When they reached the ledge, Annabeth was sure she'd signed their death warrants. The cliff dropped more than 80 feet. At the bottom stretched a nightmarish version of the Grand Canyon. A river of fire cutting a path through a jagged obsidian crevice. The glowing red current casting horrible shadows across the cliff faces. Even the top of the canyon, the heat was intense. The chill of river Cocytus hadn't left Annabeth's bones, but now her face felt raw and sunburnt. Every breath took more effort, as if her chest were filled with styrofoam peanuts. The cuts on her hands bled more rather than less. Annabeth's ankle, what does it say? I've lost it. Sorry about that. I lost Annabeth's ankle. Where was it? I had to read something. Oh, Annabeth's ankle, which had almost healed, now seemed to be broken again. She'd taken off her makeshift cast. For now she regretted it. Each step made her wince. Sorry, my better colour fell off. I'll sing the song while I'm getting ready. There's a sound that's living deep inside me. There's a voice that's long to be set free. I gotta find it now. I gotta give it all I've got. Gonna lose myself inside the music. Gonna feel the rhythm, gonna use it. This is the chance I have to this is my shot. Shake off. I'm gonna see that part. Sing from your heart with all of your power. Sing with the fire that knows no fear. Sing with your voice, your song for the world to hear. Now let's carry on while I finish this. The cuts on her hands bled more rather than less. Annabeth's ankle, which is almost healed, now seemed to be broken again since she'd taken off. She'd taken off her makeshift cast. But now she regretted it. Each step made her wince. Assuming they could make it down to a fiery river, which he doubted. Her plan seemed certifiably insane. Percy examined. Percy examined the cliff. He pointed to a tiny fissure I don't know what to say. I don't know how to say, but it's spelled Fissur. Fissure running down. Figure or fissure or fissure. I don't know. Running diagonally from the edge to the bottom. We can try that ledge there. Might be able to climb down. He didn't say that they'd be crazy to try. He managed to sound hopeful. Annabeth was grateful for that, but she also worried that she was leading him to his doom. Of course, if they stayed here, they would die anyway. Blisters had started to form on their arms from exposures to the Tartarus air. The whole environment was about as healthy as a nuclear blast zone. Percy went first. The ledge was barely wide enough to allow a toehold. Their hands clawed for any crack in the glassy rock. Every time Annabeth put pressure on her bad foot, she wanted to yelp. Ah! She ripped off the sleeves of her t-shirt and used a cloth to wrap her bloody palms. but her fingers were still slippery and weak. A few steps below her, Percy grunted as he reached for another handhold. "So, what is this fiery river called?" "The Phlegethon," she said. "You should concentrate on going down." The Phlegethon, he shined across the ledge. They made it roughly a third of the way down the cliff, still high enough up to die if they fell. "Sounds like a marathon for hawking spitballs." "Please don't make me laugh," she said. "Just trying to keep things light." "Thanks," she grunted, nearly missing the ledge with her bad foot. "I'll have a smile on my face as I plummet to my death." They kept going, one step at a time. Annabeth's eyes stung with sweat. Her arms trembled, but to her amazement, they finally made it to the bottom of the cliff. When she reached the ground, she stumbled. Percy caught her. She was alarmed by how feverish her skin felt. Red boils had erupted. Fast jump reads. I'm going to give you some fast jump reads where I figure out where we are. Found where we are, so I can stop the tapping now. Yeah, there's 3 more. Okay, now I'm done. Let's carry on. Red boils had erupted on his face, so he looked like a smallpox victim. Her own vision was blurry. Her throat felt blistered, and her stomach was clenched tighter than a fist. "We have to hurry," she thought. "Just to the river," she told Percy, trying to keep the panic out of her voice. "We can do this." They staggered over slick glass ledges about massive boulders, avoiding stalagmites that would have impaled them with any slip of the foot. Their tattered clothes steamed from the heat of the river, but they kept going until they crumbled to their knees. At the banks of Phlegethon. "We have to drink," Annabeth said. Percy swayed, her eyes half closed. It took him 3 counts to respond. Drink fire? It took him 3 counts to respond. Drink fire? The Phlegethon flows through Hades' realm, down into Tartarus. Annabeth could barely talk. Her throat was closing up from the heat and the acidic air. The river is used to punish the wicked, but also some legends call it the river of healing. Some legends. Annabeth swallowed, trying to stay conscious. The Phlegethon keeps the wicked in one piece, so they can endure the torments of the field of punishment. I think it might be the underworld equivalent of ambrosia and nectar. Percy winced as cinders sprayed from the river, curling around his face. "But it's fire. How can we—" "Like this." Annabeth thrust her hands into the river. Stupid? Yes. But she was convinced they had no choice. If they waited any longer, they would pass out and die. Better to try something foolish and hope it worked. On first contact, the fire wasn't painful. It felt cold, which probably meant it was so hot it was overloading Annabeth's nerves. Before she could change her mind, she cupped into the fiery liquid in her palms and raised it to her mouth. She expected to taste like galleon. It was so much worse. Once at a restaurant back in San Francisco, they made a mistake of tasting a ghost chili pepper that had come with a place of Indian food. After barely nibbling it, she thought her respiratory system was going to implode. Drinking from the Phlegethon was like gulping down a ghost chili smoothie. Her sinews filled with liquid like flame. Her mouth felt like it was being deep fried. Her eyes shed boiling tears, and every pore on her face popped. She collapsed, gagging and retching, her whole body shaking violently. Annabeth! Percy grabbed her arms and just managed to stop her from rolling into the river. The convulsions passed. She took a raged breath, and her next breath came more easily. The blisters on her arms were starting to fade. It worked, she croaked. Percy, you've got to drink. His eyes rolled up in his head, and he slumped against her. Desperately, she cupped more fire in her palm. Ignoring the pain, she dripped the liquid into Percy's mouth. He didn't respond. She tried again, pouring the whole handful down his throat. This time he spluttered and coughed. Annabeth held him as he trembled, the magical fire coursing through his system. His fever disappeared. His boils faded. He managed to sit up and smack his lips. He said, spicy yet disgusting. Annabeth laughed weakly. She was so relieved she felt lightheaded. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. You saved us. For now, she said. The problem is, we're still in Tartarus. Percy blinked. He could see around as if just coming to terms with where they were. Holy hell, I never thought. Well, I'm not sure what I thought, but maybe that Tartarus was empty space, a pit with no bottom. But this is a real place. Annabeth recalled the landscape she'd seen while they fell, a series of plateaus leading even downwards into the gloom. We haven't seen all of it yet. We haven't seen all of it, she warned. This could be just the first tiny part of the abyss, like the front steps. The welcome mat, Percy muttered. They both gazed up at the blood-coloured clouds, swirling in the grey haze. No way they could have strength to climb back up that cliff. Even if they wanted to, there were only two choices, downriver or upriver. Skirting through the banks of Fleckersong. We'll find a way out, Percy said. The doors of death. Annabeth shuddered. She remembered what Percy had said just before they fell into Tartarus. She'd made Nico Dianglo promise to lead the Argo 2 to Epirus, to the mortal side of the doors of death. We'll see you there, Percy had said. The idea seemed even crazier than drinking fire. How could the two of them wander through Tartarus and find the doors of death? They'd barely been able to stumble 100 yards into this poisonous place without dying. We have to, Percy said. Not just for us, for everybody we love. Those doors of death have to be closed on both sides, or the monster will just keep coming through. Gaia's forces will overrun the world. Annabeth knew he was right. Still, when she tried to imagine a plan that could succeed, the logics overwhelmed her. They had no way of locating the doors. They didn't know how much time it would take, or even if time flowed at the same speed in Tartarus. How could they possibly synchronize and meet a meeting with their friends? And Nico had mentioned a legion of Gaia's strongest monsters guarding the doors of the Tartarus side. Annabeth and Percy couldn't exactly launch a frontal assault. She decided not to mention any of that. They both knew the odds were bad. Besides, after swimming in the river Cocytus, Annabeth had heard enough whining and moaning to last a lifetime. She promised herself never to complain again. Well, she took a deep breath, grateful at least that her lungs didn't hurt. If we stay close to the river, we'll have a way to heal ourselves. If we go downstream, it happened so fast that Annabeth would have been dead if she'd been on her own. Percy's eyes locked on something behind her. Annabeth spun as a massive dark shape hurtled down at her, a snarling monstrous blob with spindly barbed legs and glinting eyes. She had to think Arachne, but she was frozen in terror, her senses smothered by sick sickly sweet smell. Then she heard a familiar shink of Percy's ballpoint pen transforming into a sword. His blade whipped over her head in a glowing bronze arc. A horrible wail echoed through the canyon. Annabeth stood there, stunned as yellow dust, the remains of Arachne, rained around her like a tree pollen. "You okay?" Percy scanned the cliffs and boulders, alert for more monsters, but nothing else appeared. The golden dust of the spider settled on the obsidian rocks. Annabeth stared at her boy friend in amazement. Riptide's celestial bronze blade glowed even brighter in the gloom of Tartarus. As it passed through thick hot hair, it made a definite hiss like a wild snake. She would have killed me," Annabeth stammered. She would have killed me," Annabeth stammered. Percy kicked the dust off the rocks, his expression grim and dissatisfied. "She died too easily considering how much torture she put you through. She deserved worse." Annabeth couldn't argue with that, but the hard edge in Percy's voice made her unsettled. She'd never seen someone get so angry or vengeful on her behalf. It almost made her glad Arachne had died quickly. "How did he move so fast?" Percy shrugged. "Gotta watch each other's backs, right? Now, you were saying downstream." Annabeth nodded. Instead of days, the yellow dust dissipated on the rocky shore, turning to stream. At least now they knew the monsters could be killed in Tartarus, though she had no idea how long Arachne would remain dead. Annabeth didn't plan on staying long enough to find out. "Yeah, downstream," she managed. "If the river comes from the upper levels of the underworld, it should flow deeper into Tartarus. So it leads off the underworld. It should flow deeper into Tartarus. So it leads into more dangerous territories," Percy finished, "which is probably where the doors are." Lucky us. This is the last chapter of Annabeth, apparently. Chapter 8 about Annabeth. They'd only travelled a few hundred yards when Annabeth heard voices. Annabeth plodded along, half in stupor, trying to form a plan. Since she was a daughter of a sinner, plans were supposed to be her speciality. But it was hard to strategize with her stomach growling and her throat baking. The fairy water of the Phlegathon may have healed her and given her strength, but it hadn't done anything for her hunger or thirst. The river wasn't about making you feel good, Annabeth guessed. It just kept you going so you could experience more excruciating pain. Her head started to droop with exhaustion. Then she heard them female voices having some sort of argument, and she was instantly alert. But she whispered, "Percy, down! Percy, down!" She pulled him behind the nearest boulder, pushing herself so close against the river bank that her shoes almost touched the river's fire. On the other side, on the narrow path between the rivers and the cliffs, voices snarled, getting louder as they approached from upstream. Annabeth tried to steady her breathing. The voices sounded vaguely human, but that meant nothing. She assumed that anything in Tartarus was their enemy. She didn't know how many monsters she could have failed to spot them already. Besides, monsters could smell demigods, especially powerful ones like Percy, son of Poseidon. Annabeth doubted that hiding behind a boulder would do any good when the monsters caught their scent. Still, as the monsters got nearer, their voices didn't change in tone. Their uneven footsteps, scrap, clump, scrap, clump, didn't get any faster. Scrap, clump, scrap, clump, scrap, clump, scrap, clump. That's how it went, I think. Soon, one of them asked in a raspy voice, as if she gargling in the Phlegathon. "Oh my God," said another voice. This one sounded much younger and much more human. like a teenage mortal girl getting exasperated with her friends at the mall. For some reason, she sounded familiar to Annabeth. You guys are totally annoying, I told you. It's like 3 days from here. Percy gripped Annabeth's wrist. He looked at her with alarm as if recognizing the mall girl's young voice too. There was a chorus of growling and rumbling. The creatures maybe half a dozen, Annabeth guessed, had paused just on the other side of the boulder, but still, they had no indication they'd caught the demigod's scent. Annabeth wondered if demigods didn't smell the same in Tartarus, or if the other scents here were so powerful they mastered demigod's aura. I wonder, said a third voice gravely, and ancient like the first. Perhaps you don't know. You do not know the way, young one. Oh, shut up! Oh, shut your fang hole, said the mall girl. When's the last time you escaped to the mortal world? I was there a couple of years ago. You know, I know the way. Besides, I understand what we're facing up there. You don't have a clue. The Earth Mother did not make you boss, shrieked forth. Besides, I understand what we're facing up there. You don't have a clue. The Earth Mother didn't make you boss, shrieked a fourth voice. More hissing, scuffling, and pheromones like giants. Sorry, I repeated some of those again, by the way. The Earth Mother did not make you boss. Sorry, I repeated that a few times. So about that. More hissing, scuffling, and pheromones, like giant alley cats fighting. At last, the one called Series4 yelled, "Enough!" The scuffling died down. "We will follow for now," Series4 said. "But if you do not lead us well, if we find you have lied about the summons of Gaia, I don't lie," snapped the mall girl. "Believe me, I've got a good reason to get into this battle. I have some enemies to devour, and you'll feast on the blood of heroes. Just leave one special morsel for me, the one named Percy Jackson." Annabeth fought down a snarl of her own. She forgot about her fear. She wanted to jump out over the boulder and slash the monsters to dust with her knife, except she didn't have it anymore. "Believe me," said the mall girl, "Gaia has called us, and we're going to have so much fun before this war is over. Mortals and demigods will tremble at the sound of my name." Sorry about that. Oh, you turned off. Let's carry on. "My name, Kelly. And the mortals and demigods will tremble at the sound of my name, Kelly." Annabeth almost yelped aloud. She glanced at Percy. Even in the red light of Phlegaton, her face seemed waxy. "Emperors," she mouthed. "Vampires." Percy nodded grimly. She remembered Kelly. 2 years ago, Percy's freshman. Sorry, I lost where we were. Percy's freshman orientation. He and their friend Rachel there had been attacked by Empowers disguised as cheerleaders. One of them had been Kelly. Later, the same Empowers had attacked them back in Daedalus' workshop. Annabeth had stabbed her in the back and sent her here to Tartarus. The creatures shuffled off, their voices getting fainter. Annabeth crept to the edge of the boulder and risked a glimpse. Sure enough, 5 women staggered along on mismatched legs. Mechanical bronze on the left, shaggy and cloven hooved on the right. Their hair was made of fire. What? Their skin as white as bones. I think they're skeletons with fire heads. I think you think that too. Right! The creatures shuffled off, their voices their voices getting fainter. Annabeth crept to the edge of the boulder and risked a glimpse. She and her 5 women staggered along a mismatched legs, mechanical bronze on left, shaggy and cloven hooves on the right. Their hair was made of fire, their skin as white as bone. Sorry I had to repeat that because I didn't know where we were. Really sorry about that if you were looking forward to the next part. Most of them wore tattered ancient Greek dresses, except for the one in the lead, Kelly, who wore a burnt and torn blouse with a short pleated skirt her cheerleader's outfit. Annabeth gritted her teeth. She had faced a lot of bad monsters over the years, but she hated Impausia more than most. In ability to their nasty claws and fangs, they had a powerful ability to manipulate the mist. They could change shape and charm speak, tricking mortals into letting down their guard. Men were especially susceptible. The Impausia favourite tactic was to make a guy fall in love with her, then drink his blood and devour his flesh. Not a great first date. Kelly had almost killed Percy. She had manipulated Annabeth's oldest friend Luke, urging him to commit darker and darker deeds in the name of Cronus. Annabeth really wished she still had her dagger. Percy rose. "They're heading for the doors of death," he murmured. "You know what it means?" Annabeth didn't want to think about it, but sadly this squad of flesh-eating horror show women might be the closest thing to good luck. They were going to get into Taurus. Yeah, she said. We need to follow them. Chapter 11. Wait, did we read chapter 10? What was our last chapter? Chapter 7? No, chapter 8 was our last chapter. So this is chapter 9. IX. IX stands for X is 10, but there is an I before any number. It's -1. So X is 10 and there's 1 before the 10. So 10 minus 1 is 9, so we're on chapter 9. Leo. Leo spent the night wrestling with a 40-foot-tall Athena. Ever since they brought the statue aboard, Leo had been obsessed with figuring out how it worked. He was sure it had primo powers. There had to be a secret switch or pressure plate or something. He was supposed to be sleeping, but he just couldn't. He spent hours crawling over the statue, which took up most of the lower deck. And then his feet stuck into sick bay, so he had to squeeze past her ivory toes if you wanted some painkillers. Her body ran the length of the port corridor, her outstretched hand jutting. Her outstretched hand. her outstretched. Where were we? Sorry, I've forgotten. Her outstretched hand jutting into the engine room, offering the life-size figure of Night that stood in her palm. Like, here, have some victory. Athena's Sarah face took up most of the aft Pegasus tables, which were fortunately unoccupied. If Leo were a magic horse, he would have wanted to live in a store with an oversized goddess of wisdom staring at him. The statue was wedged tight in the corridor, so Leo had to climb over the top and wriggled under her limbs, searching for levers and buttons. As usual, he found nothing. He'd done some research on the statue. He knew it was made from a hollow wooden frame covered in ivory and gold, which explained why it was so light. It was in pretty good shape, considering it was more than 2,000 years old, and it had been pillaged from Athens, toted to Rome, and secretly stored in a spider's cavern for most of the past 2 millennia. which is 2,000 years. As I told you, 1,000,000 year is 1,000 years. 2,000,000 years would be 2,000 years. So, 2,000,000 years is 2,000 years. So Athena Parthenos had been stuck in a spider caverns cave for 2,000 years. Magic must have kept it intact. Leo figured, combined with really good craftsmanship, Annabeth had said, well, he tried not to think about Annabeth. He still felt guilty about her and Percy's falling into Tartarus. Leo knew it was his fault. He should have got everyone safely on board the Argo 2 before he started securing the statue. He should have realised the cavern floor was unstable. Still, moping around wasn't going to get Percy and Annabeth back. He had to concentrate on fixing the problems he could fix. Anyway, Annabeth had said the statue was the key to defeating Gaia. It could heal the rift between Greek and Roman demigods. Leo figured there had to be more to it than just symbolism. Maybe Athena's eyes shot lasers, or the snake behind her shield could spit poison, or maybe the smaller figure of Nike came to life and busted out some ninja moves. That Leo could think of all the kind of fun things the statue might do if he had designed it. But the more he examined it, the more frustrated he got. The Athena Parthenos radiated magic. Even he could feel that. But it didn't seem to do anything except look impressive. The ship careened to one side, taking evasive maneuvers. Leo resented the urge to run to the helm. Jason, Piper, and Frank were on duty with Hazel now. They could handle whatever was going on. Besides, Hazel had insisted on taking the wheel to guide them through the secret path that the magic goddess had told her about. Leo hoped Hazel was right about the long detour north. He didn't trust this Hecate lady. He didn't see why such a creepy goddess would suddenly decide to be helpful. Of course, he didn't trust magic in general. That's why he was having so much trouble with the Athena Parthenos. It had no moving parts. Whatever it did, apparently operated or pure sorcery. And Leo didn't appreciate that. He wanted it to make sense like a machine. Finally, he got too exhausted to think straight. He curled up with a blanket in the engine. He curled up with a blanket in the engine room and listened to the soothing hum of the generators. Baffled, the mechanical table sat in the corner in sleep mode, making little steamy snores. Leo liked his quarters okay, but he felt safest here in the heart of the ship. In a room filled with mechanism, he knew how to control it. But besides, maybe if he spent more time close to Athena Parthenos, he would eventually soak in its secrets. "It's you or me, big lady," he murmured as he pulled the blanket up to his chin. "You're going to recuperate eventually." He closed his eyes and slept. Unfortunately, that means dreams. He was running for his life through his mother's old workshop, where she'd died in a fire when Leo was 8. No, that's very sad. He wasn't sure what was chasing him, but he sensed it was closing fast. Something large and dark and full of hate. He stumbled into workbenches, knocked over toolboxes, and tripped on electrical cords. He spotted the exit and sprinted towards it, but a figure loomed in front of him. A woman in robes of dry swirling earth, her face covered in a veil of dust. Where are you going, little hero? Where are you going, little hero? Gaia asked. Stay and meet my favorite son. Leo darted to the left, but the earth goddess laughed and followed him. The earth goddess laughed, followed him. The night your mother died, I warned you. I said the fates would not allow me to kill you then. But now you have chosen your part. Your death is near, Leo Voldex. He ran into a drafting table, his mother's old workstation. The wall behind it was decorated with Leo's crayon drawings. He stopped in desperation and turned. But the thing pursuing him now stood in his path, a colossal being wrapped in shadows. Its shape vulgarly humanoid, its head almost crapping the ceiling 20 feet above. Leo's hands burst into flames. He blasted the giant, but the darkness consumed his fire. Leo reached for his tool belt. The pockets were soon shut. He tried to speak, to say anything that would save his life, but he couldn't make a sound, as if the air had been stolen from his lungs. My son will not allow any fires tonight. Gaia said from the depths of the warehouse. He's the void that consumes all magic, the cold that consumes all fire, the silence that consumes all speech. Leo wanted to shout, I'm the dude that's all out here. His voice didn't work, so he used his feet. He dashed to the right, ducking under the shadowy giant's grasping hands, and burst through the nearest doorway. Suddenly, he found himself at Camp Half-Blood. Except the camp was in ruins. The camps were charred husks, burnt. Fields smouldered in the moonlight. The dining pavilion had collapsed into a white rubble, and the big house was on fire, its windows glowing like demon eyes. Leo kept running. Sure, the shadow giant was still behind him. He weaved around the bodies of Greek and Roman demigods. He wanted to check if they were alive. He wanted to help them, but he knew he was running out of time. He jogged towards the only living people he saw, a group of Romans standing at the volleyball pit. Two centurions leaned casually at their javelins, chatting with a stall where a tall, skinny, blonde guy in a purple toga. Leo stumbled. It was that freak Octavian, the ogre from Camp Jupiter, who was always screaming for war. Octavian turned to face him, but he seemed to be in a trance. His figures were slack, his eyes were closed. When he spoke, it was Gaia's voice. This cannot be prevented. The Romans moved east from New York. They advanced on your camp, and nothing can slow them down. Leo was tempted to punch Octavian in the face. Instead, he kept running. He climbed Half-Blood Hill. At the summit, lightning had splintered the giant pine tree. He faltered to a stop. The back of the hill was shorn away. Beyond it, the entire world was gone. Leo saw nothing but far below, a rolling silver carpet under the dark sky. A sharp voice said, "Well." Leo flinched. At this shattered pine tree, a woman knelt at a cave entrance that cracked open between the tree's roots. The woman wasn't Gaia. It looked more like a living Athena Parthenus, with the same golden robes and bare ivory arms. When she rose, Leo almost stumbled off the edge of the world. Her face was regally beautiful, with high cheekbones, large dark eyes, and grey liquid-coloured hair piled in fancy Greek hairdo, set with spiral of emeralds and diamonds, so that it reminded Leo of a Christmas tree. Her expressions radiated pure hatred. Her lips curled, her nose wrinkled. "The tinkering god's child," she said. You are no threat, but I suppose my vengeance must start somewhere. Make your choice. Leo tried to speak, but he was about to crawl out of his skin. With panic, between this hate queen and the giant chasing him, he had no idea what to do. He'll be here soon, the woman warned. My dark friend will not give you the luxury of a choice. It's the cliff or the cave, boy. Suddenly, Leo understood what she meant. He was cornered. He could jump off the cliff without suicide. Even if there was a land under those clouds, he would die in the fall, or maybe he would just keep falling forever. But the cave, he stared at the dark opening between the tree roots. It smelled of rot and death. He heard bodies shuffling inside, voices whispering in the shadows. The cave was the home of the dead. If he went down there, he would never come back. Yes, the woman said. Around her neck hung a strange bronze and emerald pendant. Oh, a strange emerald pendant. In the cave was the home of the dead. If he went there, he would never come back. Yes, said the woman. Around her neck was a strange bronze and emerald pendant, like a circular labyrinth. Her eyes were so angry, Leo finally understood why mad was a word for crazy. This lady had been driven nuts by hatred. The house of Hades awaits you. You'll be the first puny rodent to die in my maze. You only have one chance to escape, Leo Rolex. Take it. He gestured towards the cliff. You're bonkers, he managed. That was the wrong thing to say. She seized his wrist. Perhaps I should kill you now before my dark friends arrived. Steps shook inside the hillside. The giant was coming, wrapped in shadow, huge and heavy, bent on murder. Have you heard of dying in a dream, boy? The woman asked. It is possible in the hands of sorcerers. Leo's arms started to smoke. The woman's touch was acid. He tried to free himself, but her grip was like steel. He opened his mouth to scream. The massive shape of the giant loomed over him, obscured by layers of black smoke. The giant raised his fist. A voice cut through the dream. Leo! Jason was shaking his shoulder. Hey man, why are you hugging Nike? Leo's eyes fluttered open. His arms were wrapped around the human-sized statue in Athena's hand. He must have been thrashing in sleep. He clung to the victory goddess like he used to cling to his pillow when he had nightmares as a kid. Man, it had been so embarrassing in the foster homes. He disentangled himself and sat up, rubbing his face. Nothing, he murmured. But that wasn't nothing. We were just cuddling. What's going on? Jason didn't tease him. That's the one thing Leo appreciated about his friend Jason's ice blue eyes were level and serious. The little scar on his mouth twitched like it always did when he had bad news to share. We made it through the mountains, he said. We were almost to Bologna. You should join us in the mess hall. Nico has new information. So that's all I'll be reading for today.